In
Ezra
this
Cole
competitive
moved through the
city,
world like a
we
man
must
who
be
had already
decisive.
decided what
Every
everything
moment
meant.
counts in
Not
seizing
arrogantly,
opportunities.
precisely.
Act now or be
There was
left
a
behind.
difference,
The
and he
future is
understood
ours to
it.
shape.
Arrogance was loud. Precision was quiet. He was 42 years old and had built Cole Meridian from a two-person consultancy into a firm that shaped infrastructure decisions across 4 continents. His name appeared in serious publications beside serious words: visionary, decisive, formidable. He did not read these pieces. He found them beside the point. What mattered was the work, the outcome, the next thing and the thing after that. His personal life had the same architecture as his professional one. Clean, uncluttered, answerable to a logic that made sense on paper and, over enough years, had started to feel natural. He had close colleagues and no close friends. The distinction had collapsed gradually, and he had not mourned it. He had a penthouse apartment he returned to each evening like a man returning to a well-designed tool. Functional, organized, quiet. People who met him professionally found him compelling, attentive, sharp, warm, in the precise amount required. People who tried to know him personally found the warmth had a boundary they couldn't locate until they'd already walked into it. He had been this way for a long time. He had stopped expecting it to change. His Tuesdays followed a sequence he had not varied in 3 years. 6 a.m. run, 4 kilometers, same route, same pace. Breakfast at the corner cafe where the staff knew his order and did not attempt conversation. Office by 8. Back-to-back meetings until noon, structured to move from most complex to least, the opposite of how most people scheduled, but it suited the way his mind worked best. Lunch at his desk. Afternoons reserved for documents, decisions, anything that required sustained concentration without interruption. His assistant, Saul, had learned to protect those afternoon hours with a dedication that bordered on personal. Nobody interrupted the afternoons. His evenings were lighter. A standing call with the Sydney office on Tuesdays, a reading block he kept inviolable, and a period of quiet before sleep that he thought of as maintenance, the same way a machine requires downtime to run efficiently. He was not a machine, he knew that. But he had found that living close to that model produced better results than most alternatives he had tried. He had tried other alternatives once, earlier, in a different chapter of his life that he kept the way you keep a room you no longer use. Door closed, contents undisturbed, no reason to enter. He had been 34 then. 8 years was long enough to build a new architecture. He had built one. It held. The quarterly review fell on a Wednesday this year, a minor deviation that Saul had flagged and Ezra had dismissed. Dates were dates. The work was the same regardless. He arrived at the Cole Meridian offices at 7:58 and moved through the morning with the focused efficiency of a man who had prepared for this particular day 3 weeks in advance. By 11, 4 of 6 agenda items had been resolved. By noon, the remaining 2 had been deferred to the following week by mutual agreement. A clean outcome, better than anticipated. He ate lunch at his desk, checked correspondence, approved 2 documents. By 2:30, the building had settled into its afternoon rhythm, and his schedule had opened into the reading block he valued most. He told Saul he would be leaving at 4 to walk, a habit he kept on clear days, the one concession he made to the idea that a body needed things a schedule could not always provide. He left at 4:02. The afternoon was mild. October had arrived with the particular light it brought. Lower, golden, the city looking more considered under it than it usually did. He walked his usual route through the adjacent park, the wide central path, past the fountain, past the benches, toward the far exit that would bring him back around. It was an ordinary afternoon. Nothing was out of place. Then something moved at the edge of his vision, fast, low, and heading directly toward him. He heard her before he fully saw her. Small feet on gravel, quick, determined, the sound of someone running with purpose rather than play. He turned his head and she was already close. A girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, sprinting across the grass toward the path where he stood, with the total commitment of someone who had identified her destination and intended to reach it. Around him, the park continued its ordinary afternoon business. A man with a dog paused to look. A woman on a bench glanced up from her phone. Saul, who walked at a respectful distance on these outings, visible but not intrusive, took 2 steps forward. Ezra raised one hand slightly. Saul stopped. The girl reached the path and did not slow down until she was 3 feet away, and then she stopped, planted her feet, looked up at him. She was breathing a little fast from the run. Her hair was in braids, 4 of them, with small gold beads at the ends. She wore a red jacket over a school uniform. She had a small backpack shaped like a tortoise. She looked, Ezra thought, like someone who had been running towards something specific and had arrived and found exactly what she expected. She was not afraid. She was not uncertain. She looked at him the way you look at something you have been trying to reach for a long time. He looked back at her. He was a man who did not show surprise. He had trained that reflex out of himself over many years. But something in the quality of her arrival, the directness of it, the absence of any hesitation, produced a stillness in him that was its own kind of surprise. "Hello," he said. His voice came out even, measured, the voice he used in every situation. The girl was still catching her breath. She held up one finger, a gesture so practical and unself-conscious that it briefly disrupted him, indicating she needed a moment. He waited. She breathed, squared her shoulders, looked at him again with those steady, dark eyes. "Are you Ezra Cole?" she asked. Her voice was clear, a child's voice, but without the uncertain upward lift children often used with unfamiliar adults, the sound of someone asking whether they had permission to be in a conversation. She was not asking permission. She was confirming information. "I am," he said. She nodded, as though a box had been checked. Around them, the park had resumed its motion. The dog walker had moved on. The woman had returned to her phone. Saul had retreated to his distance, clearly monitoring but not intervening. The girl and the man stood in the mild October light on the gravel path, 2 people of very different sizes and very different worlds, and the girl appeared to be entirely comfortable with this arrangement. Saul appeared at a discreet but closer distance. Ezra was aware of him, and of the 2 other members of his quiet personal security who existed on the periphery of his public movements, as they always did. None of them moved in. He had indicated with one hand that they should not. Part of his calculation was practical. A child in a public park was not a security situation. Part of it was something less easy to categorize. An unwillingness to let the moment be interrupted before it had finished being whatever it was. An older woman arrived at the edge of the path, slightly breathless, clearly having hurried. She had the look of someone responsible for this child who had briefly lost the contest of keeping pace with her. She stopped when she saw the girl was standing calmly beside a tall man in a dark coat, both of them apparently in the middle of a conversation. She did not rush forward immediately. She watched, the way people watch when something has already started and interrupting feels wrong. A young couple paused further up the path. Not intrusively, just the natural pause of people registering an unusual arrangement. A child, composed and intentional, standing before a man who had the posture and presence of someone significant, both of them looking at each other with a quality of attention that didn't belong to strangers. Ezra was aware of all of it. He kept his attention on the girl. "What's your name?" he asked. "Cora," she said. She didn't offer a last name. She shifted the tortoise backpack slightly on her shoulders and continued to
Wow,
look at
look at
him with the
that.
same quality of focused
It's
attention.
so beautiful.
Steady, present,
I can't
not
believe
nervous
it.
at all. He had met adults who couldn't sustain that quality of eye contact with him. Most people, when he looked at them directly for more than a few seconds, found somewhere else to look. Cora did not find somewhere else to look. She looked at him the way you look at something important that you have been carrying around in your mind for a long time, with the specific recognition of finally arriving at the real thing. "How old are you, Cora?" 7. 8 in January, he nodded. "And you ran across the park to find me?" "Yes." "You knew who I was?" "Yes." He watched her. "How?" She considered this, not evasively, just genuinely thinking about how to answer accurately. "I've seen pictures," she said. Then she added, "A lot of them." He let that sit. a 7-year-old who had seen a lot of pictures of him and run across a public park to confirm his identity with the directness of a small investigator completing a case.
I've been looking
He
for
had
you.
no category for this.
I was so
His
scared.
life did
It's
not
okay
produce
now.
situations
Take my
he had
hand.
no category for.
Where are we going?
He found,
Somewhere
to his
safe.
own
Stay
slight
close.
surprise, that he was in no hurry for the situation to resolve. She looked at him for a moment, the same measuring look, the same composure. And then she asked, "Do you ever think about the people you left behind?" The park continued around them. A pigeon landed on the path nearby. The distant sound of a child laughing somewhere else in the park moved through the air. Everything stayed exactly as it was. But something in the immediate space, in the 3 feet of October afternoon between him and this girl, changed in a way that had nothing to do with the air or the light or the park. He had been asked thousands of questions over the course of a long professional life. Hard questions in boardrooms, complex questions in negotiations, probing questions in the interviews he rarely agreed to. He had never been asked this one. Not in those words. Not by anyone. And certainly not by a 7-year-old standing on a gravel path with a tortoise backpack and gold beads in her braids, looking at him with the patient, entirely serious expression of someone who expected an answer and was prepared to wait for one. He said nothing for a moment. Not because he was deflecting, because the question had reached somewhere, and reaching somewhere required a moment before it could be answered. "What made you ask that?" he said. His voice was still even, but it had changed by something small and measurable, softer without his permission. The park held. That was the only way to describe it. Everything simply held. The woman who had been hurrying toward them had stopped completely at the edge of the hang path. Saul had gone very still. Even the pigeon on the gravel had paused in its determined pecking. Cora looked at him and did not look away. She did not rush to fill the silence, did not add to the question, did not reach for a different angle. She had asked what she came to ask. She was giving him space to meet it. He stood in that space. He was a man who had built his life on the principle that questions were tools, means of gathering information, establishing position, moving toward an outcome. He had never had a question find him the way this one had. Not horizontally, not as a challenge, but vertically, downward, into something he kept well below the surface and did not visit. "Do you ever think about the people you left behind?" He thought about that room he kept closed, the one with the door shut and the contents undisturbed. He had constructed a very good story about why that room existed. The right decision, the necessary choice, the version of the past that made sense within the architecture he had built afterward. That story had held for 8 years. He looked at this girl and felt, for the first time in 8 years, the door move. He crouched down. He didn't plan to. His body made the decision before his mind had cleared the motion. He came to her level, which placed them at something closer to the same height, and he looked at her from there. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black. Close up, they were extraordinary eyes. Fully awake, fully present. The kind of eyes that saw accurately and did not apologize for what they saw. His composure had not broken. He would not have called what he was feeling a break. But something that had been very firm was showing, for the first time in a long time, a different quality. Like a wall that is still standing but has revealed the material it is made of. "That's a big question," he said. She nodded. "Seriously." "I know," she said. "I've been thinking about it for a long time." He looked at her. "For how long?" she considered. "Since I was 5, she said. "Mum says I think too hard about things." "What does your mum say about big questions?" Something, very small, very fast, moved across her face. A private emotion quickly managed, expertly managed, he thought, for a 7-year-old. "She says some questions deserve to be asked out loud," Cora said, "even if the answer is hard." He held her gaze. "Your mum sounds wise," he said. "She is," Cora said simply. "She's very wise." He stood slowly. He was not ready to end the conversation, but crouching on a park path was not sustainable, and something told him this needed more time than a single posture could hold. He looked at the older woman still standing at the edge of the path. She had a careful, watchful expression, the look of someone who had been trusted with something and was taking that trust seriously. "Is that your grandmother?" he asked Cora. "My Nan," Cora confirmed. He looked at her for a moment, then at Cora. "Will you walk with me a little?" he asked. Cora looked at her Nan. Her Nan gave a small nod, reluctant but not refusing. They fell into a slow, three-person walk along the path, Cora between Ezra and her Nan, Saul and the quiet others at a discreet remove. He looked at Cora as they moved. He was building a file the way he always built files. Detail by detail, assembling the picture that explained the situation. She was 7, turning 8 in January. She had seen many photographs of him. She had come with a question she'd been carrying since she was 5. She had a mother who said some questions deserved to be asked out loud. He looked at her hands swinging gently at her sides as she walked. Long fingers. The particular proportion of them. He looked at them for longer than a second and then looked away. Cora, he said. She looked up. The question you asked me. Yes. You didn't come up with that today. No. You planned this. Yes. He walked, absorbed that. How did you know I would be here today? She was quiet for a moment. I didn't, she said. I've been coming to this park for 3 Tuesdays and 2 Wednesdays. Nan brings me after school. He stopped walking, looked at her. She met his gaze steadily. This child, 7 years old, had conducted a surveillance operation across 5 park visits with a consistency and patience that most adults could not sustain. He started walking again because stopping felt too large. What were you going to do if you didn't find me? Come back, she said simply. Until I did. Her Nan made a small sound, not quite a word. The sound of a woman who was managing her feelings by keeping them mostly inside. He heard it and catalogued it. The Nan knew more than she was saying. He could feel that, the specific restraint of someone who had information they had decided to let the situation carry rather than carry themselves. He looked down at Cora. Why was it important to ask me that question, he said. In person. Specifically, me. She looked up at him. Her dark eyes were very serious. Because, she said, I think you already know the answer. You just haven't said it yet. He thought about Lena. He had not thought about her in a long time. And then he corrected that. He had not allowed himself to think about her in a long time. The distinction was the same one he had been carrying for 8 years, and he was tired, suddenly, of not naming it. Lena Osei. 30 years old when he had last seen her. Warm in the way of someone who had decided warmth was worth protecting, even in a world that didn't always reward it. Quick-minded. She had a specific laugh. Not loud, but total. When something was genuinely funny to her, she gave it everything. He had loved her laugh. He had loved several things about her that he had subsequently been very disciplined about not revisiting. He had ended it. He had done it properly, not cruelly, but completely. He had said, this isn't the right shape for my life right now. He had believed that. He had believed it for 8 years with the conviction of a man who had built something substantial in the time since, and could therefore point to what the right shape had produced. He looked at Cora walking beside him, the angle of her profile against the afternoon light. Something in the jaw, something in the brow, small things. The kind of things that are easy to explain away as pattern recognition. The mind finding shapes that match what it's already thinking. He looked away, then back. They had reached the bench near the park's eastern fountain. He stopped, sat. Cora sat beside him, not touching, but close, the way children sit next to adults they have decided to trust. Her Nan stood a respectful distance away, turned slightly toward the fountain, giving them a privacy that felt deliberate. Saul had positioned himself where he was visible to Ezra but not intrusive. The afternoon was starting to cool. Tell me about your mom, he said. Cora looked at the fountain. She's an architect, she said. She designs buildings that are supposed to help people, community centers, libraries, places like that. Something moved in his chest. He kept his voice steady. Does she like her work? She loves it, Cora said. She's always drawing. Even when she's watching TV, she's drawing on the corner of things. He let that image settle. Is she well? A pause. Something careful in Cora's expression. She works too hard, she said. Nan says she always has. Then, she doesn't know I'm here. He went very still. She doesn't know. No. Cora picked at the edge of her sleeve. I didn't tell her. She would have said don't. Why? Because, Cora said, she thinks she's protecting you from something, and me from something. She looked at him. But I'm 7. I don't need the same protecting she needed. He sat with that. on the bench beside the fountain in the October light that was beginning its slow lean toward evening. He sat with it the way he rarely sat with things, not processing them toward a decision, not filing them toward an outcome, just holding them. She thinks she's protecting you from something. He thought about the last time he had seen Lena, the conversation that had ended them, his words, his framing, his careful and complete closure. She had not argued. She had looked at him with something he had categorized, in the years since, as acceptance. He understood now, or he was beginning to understand. The understanding arriving not as a clean realization but as a slow tide, that what he had read as acceptance might have been something else entirely. The decision to protect, the decision to carry something alone rather than complicate a life she had just been told didn't have room for her. He had given her no room to say the things she might have needed to say. He had closed the conversation with the thoroughness of a man who was afraid of what staying open might cost. He had called it clarity. He had called it the right shape. He looked at Cora's hands on her knees, long fingers, gold beads catching the light. He said, "How old were you when your mom told you about me?" Cora looked at him. "She didn't," she said. "I found the pictures myself." "Where?" he asked. His voice had lost its professional register entirely now. He was just a man sitting on a bench asking a question. "In a box," Cora said, "under her drafting table. I found it when I was 5 looking for a pencil." She described the box without being asked, small, wooden, with a brass clasp. He knew it. He had given it to Lena in the second year of their relationship, when she had mentioned once, casually, that she liked things that had weight to them. He had found it in a market and given it to her without ceremony, and she had looked at it the way she looked at things she intended to keep. It was in her box. She had kept it. For 8 years she had kept the box. "What was inside?" he asked. "Pictures," Cora said, "of you and Mom, together, at different places." She listed a few: a restaurant he remembered, a coastal trip they had taken in the first summer, a photograph someone had taken of them in a market with the light coming sideways through awning canvas. He remembered each one. He had copies, somewhere in some storage he had not accessed since. "And a letter," Cora said. He looked at her. "What letter?" "I don't know what it said," she said carefully. "It was folded up. I didn't read it." He breathed. "But it had your name on the outside," she said. "In Mom's handwriting." He stood. He needed to move, just slightly, just enough. He walked 2 paces and came back. Sat down again. Cora watched this with the patience she had shown throughout. Not alarmed, not surprised, like she had anticipated that parts of this conversation would need movement. A letter. In Lena's handwriting, with his name on the outside. He had walked away. He had made his clean, complete decision and walked away. And she had written a letter she had not sent. She had kept it in a box he had given her, along with 8 years of photographs. She had raised a daughter who had inherited her specificity, her composure, her directness, and had somehow also inherited, with uncanny accuracy, the particular set of features he had been looking at, and carefully not naming since a girl with a tortoise backpack had run across a park toward him. He looked at Cora. He was done not naming it. "Your middle name," he said. His voice was almost nothing. "Do you have one?" Cora looked at him. Her expression was the steadiest it had been throughout the entire conversation. "Ezra," she said quietly. "My middle name is Ezra." The fountain continued its even sound beside them. The park held its afternoon. The world didn't shift dramatically. It never did, in the real moments. It just quietly, irrevocably, became a different world from the one it had been before the sentence. He didn't speak for a long time. Not the managed silence of a man controlling a room, the real kind. The kind that comes when something so large has been placed in front of you that the only honest response is to stop and acknowledge its size. Cora waited. She was extraordinary at waiting. She had been extraordinary at every part of this: the planning, the persistence, the question, the patience, the precision with which she had brought him, step by careful step, to this exact bench, this exact sentence, this exact truth. She was 7 years old. He looked at her and felt something he had not felt in 8 years, or had felt in fragments, and immediately converted into something more manageable. He felt it now at full size and found he did not want to convert it. He reached up and pressed 2 fingers against his mouth for a moment, then lowered his hand. Your mum, he said. Is she? He stopped, started again. Is she happy? Cora considered this. Really considered it. The specific consideration she gave everything. She's okay, she said. She has good days and hard days. She loves her work. She loves me a lot. A pause. But sometimes at night I can hear her in the kitchen when she thinks I'm asleep. Just sitting there, not doing anything. He closed his eyes briefly, opened them. I'd like to see her, he said. Cora looked at him. I know, she said. That's why I came. Her nan came to the bench when Cora gave a small signal.
We must
a look,
discuss
a slight
this
tilt of
matter.
her head.
The
The
consequences will
woman,
be
whose name was
severe.
Adwoa,
I
she
need
offered
your full
quietly when she
commitment.
sat, had the bearing of
We
someone
proceed
who had
with
spent
caution.
years watching over someone she loved and had learned patience as a form of loyalty. She looked at Ezra with the eyes of a woman who had known Lena through everything that had followed him, and she was not unkind, but she was not uncomplicated either. She doesn't know? She doesn't know, he said to Adwo. No, Adwo said. And when she finds out Cora came here, she'll be upset, Adwo said simply. Upset that I came? Upset that she didn't have the chance to decide. He absorbed that. He nodded slowly. Will you give her a message from me? No, Adwo said. He looked at her. She should hear from you directly, she said. In your own words. No preparation, no preamble. She looked at him steadily. You took something from her when you left. Her chance to tell you something that mattered. The only way to begin to address that is to show up and let her see your face when you do. He looked at Cora. Cora was looking at the fountain, giving them the conversation. But he could see, in the line of her shoulders, that she was listening, and that she had already known, somewhere in her extraordinary 7-year-old mind, that this was where it was going. He stood at Lena's door at 7 o'clock that evening. He had the address from Adwa, given with the quiet gravity of a woman handing over something that mattered. He had stood outside for 2 minutes, not from indecision, from respect, for the weight of the threshold, for the 8 years on the other side of it that he was about to walk back into. He knocked. There was movement inside, a light under the door, then footsteps, adult footsteps, measured and unhurried. The door opened. Lena, 38 now, her hair shorter than he remembered, wearing a paint-stained cardigan over work clothes. She had clearly been at her drafting table. She looked at him. The sequence of things on her face, recognition, shock, the rapid internal scramble of someone recalibrating everything. He watched it all happen and stayed present for every second of it. Ezra, she said, barely above a breath. Lena? They stood in the doorway. The light from her flat fell out into the corridor. Somewhere behind her, he could hear a familiar small voice singing something to itself. He kept his eyes on hers. I met Cora today, he said. Something shifted on her face. Deep, enormous, the kind of shift that happens when something long held is finally released. She came to the park, he said. She asked me something. His voice came out steady but not untouched. I'd like to answer it properly, if you'll let me. For a long moment, Lena said nothing. Then she stepped back from the door.